Welcome in, everyone. I'm Gerard Ramallo, and this is the Vegas Verdict. Here we take a look at local and national issues of interest. We offer legal insight whenever possible, and ultimately, we hand down a verdict. Today, we have a political issue that we are talking about. It is ballot question number 3 on the upcoming ballot, now literally days away in November. So we're talking about ballot question 3, also known as ranked choice voting. We've got 2 guests with us today. Dr. Sondra Cosgrove is here, professor of social sciences at CSN and also with Better Votes Nevada. And we also have Emily Persaud-Zamora. She's the executive director of Silver State Voices. You both are very versed on this issue, and you have some differing opinions. So we're ready to learn. Before we jump in, let's watch this short video that kind of encapsulates the issue that we're talking about today.
Right now, almost 1 million independent voters are shut out from participating in Nevada's closed primary.
But it doesn't have to be this way.
Question 3 opens our primary to all registered voters, so you have better choices and your voice matters.
With Question 3, everyone has the right to vote for one candidate in the June primary to determine the final 5 candidates for the November general election.
So it's not just the hand-picked candidates of the political elites and backroom insiders.
Then, in the November general election, you rank the top 5 vote-getters from the open primary election in the order of your preference, first, second, third, and so on. You have the option to rank as many or as few candidates as you like.
Then, the candidate the majority of people agree on wins.
To count the votes, we start with everyone's first choice. If one receives more than 50%, the race is over, and that candidate wins. Since purple got the fewest votes, the people who picked purple as their first choice now have their vote count toward their second choice instead, with their second choice vote going to the remaining candidates.
Now, green, orange, gray, and yellow have more votes.
How does ranked choice voting work? Ranked choice voting, also known as RCV, is an election system where voters rank candidates on a numerical scale from their most favorite to their least favorite. But who wins? The candidate with at least 50% of the vote wins. But what if nobody gets 50% of the vote? With RCV, the computer system will calculate which candidate had the least number of votes and reassign those votes to the voter's next choice. If that second round of tallying still doesn't produce a candidate with 50% of the vote, the cycle is repeated in a third round. And if necessary, a fourth round. Didn't choose a second favorite candidate? If you didn't completely fill out your ballot and the system needs your next choice candidate, then your ballot is considered exhausted and basically thrown out. That means with each passing round, less people actually have a say in who's elected. So much for every vote counting. Vote no on ballot question 3. Your opinion matters and your vote should count.
Question 3 means better choices and your voice matters.
Vote yes on question 3.
So full disclosure, I had to edit down those videos, and I was trying to find clips that were within a time frame that were easy to understand and that were, making sense overall. There's a lot of fruit salad, if you will, on the fruits and colors, and I think that's the biggest argument against implementing ranked choice. Dr. Cosgrove, why don't we start with you? Give us your thoughts on why this is a good idea.
Sure. So our primary processes need an overhaul. We have too many kind of confusing and hard to understand rules that are associated with our primary. All of our down ballot races are already open primary top 2. Top of the ticket races are closed primary, also top 2, with an exception. If only one party runs candidates, then whoever wins in that closed primary actually then goes to the general by themselves and wins. So you have new people coming into the state not understanding why some races are showing up on their ballot and others are not. So all this is doing in ballot question 3 is saying our top of the ticket closed primary races will now look like our bottom of the ticket open primary races. All the candidates on one unified ballot, no one is prohibited from voting.
Yeah.
From there, Everybody would vote the same way they're voting now in the primary. You pick one. And then in the top of the ticket races, which will be partisan, people can still put an R or a D or an I or an MP next to their name. Instead of doing top 2, move 5 candidates forward. What we see in races where it's top 2, it's usually just the 2 people with the most money. And so oftentimes there's not a lot of diversity there. And you can define diversity in a lot of different ways, ideological, gender, age. But if you move top 5, then you're much more likely to pick up maybe some younger candidates. Some candidates are speaking to younger voters. But if you do that, you reform our primary and then you do top 5, you don't want to inadvertently create a situation where you're going to have vote splitting or a spoiler effect is maybe what we've heard about like RFK or the Green Party. And so what you're doing is giving people the option to rank. As the first video showed, if you don't want to participate, you pick one, the same way as you do right now, and you can be done. What was wrong with that second video, it says if you only pick one and it goes into an instant runoff, your ballot is exhausted and it gets thrown out. That's not true.
That's not accurate?
That's not true, because if you say pick candidate A and candidate A is not eliminated, you participate in every round of the instant runoff as long as candidate A is not eliminated. But even if candidate A is eliminated, your ballot is not thrown out. We just count that as none of these candidates are a blank. You are no longer participating in the rest of the runoff. Just in that race, your whole ballot is not thrown out.
Yeah, I do think there's a little bit of confusion there. One of the strong arguments in favor, and really we should probably point out that ballot question 3 is a 2-part ballot, basically, or 2-part question. There's the open primary and then adopting of the ranked choice system. I think a lot of people are in favor of opening up the primary. We've got a large independent population, about I think 1 million people or so, who really can't participate in the primary process. Does it have to be ranked choice? Is there, obviously that's what's on the ballot now. But Emily, give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't have to be a ranked choice, right? And are elections perfect? No. There is some need of reform. We've been doing a lot of amazing reforms, and they've helped the state of Nevada grow in voter access and voter participation tremendously over the last 5 years. I think that unfortunately, this is the video that was just shown. That's honestly the first video that I have seen where the Yes On campaign is talking about RCV. All of the messaging that you see out there, and primary. I'm not speaking about the engagements, the speaking engagements that she's doing, but anything that's coming directly from the campaign, whether it's ads or TV commercials or what have you, all of it is just about open primaries.
I agree. That's a strategy thing, and I've seen 30-second ads. You don't explain ranked choice in 30 seconds.
That's the problem.
You explain that we have a closed primary, and here's a solution.
Yeah.
Vote yes. You know what I mean?
And I feel like it's being deceitful to the voters, right? Because if you were a voter who's not listening to this podcast or does not have the time to do the research on the issue yourself, you're walking into really just thinking that this ballot initiative is just about that, when it's really not. And it's not fair, to sit here and only have one particular message about a ballot initiative when there are so many more implications of what this ballot initiative could do.
I think there are 2 objectives that most of the electorate would agree on, and that is that we want more engagement and we want the best candidates possible out there. We want, several to choose from. Dr. Cosgrove, does this satisfy those 2 objectives?
I think it does, because we only had 19% turnout in the June primary. That's a very low number. Oftentimes that's the party stalwarts. That's not the average person who's out there, like Emily said, living their life and trying to raise their kids. So we need to be more open in our primaries, invite more people to participate, and not use the word prohibit when we're talking about voters. But we also want to make sure and capture, we have lots of great people who run in our primaries that lose in the primary and we don't see them again. Yeah. I want to see those ideas moving forward into our general election. And when you have top 5, more than likely it's going to go into at least one round of instant runoff to get somebody to 50% plus 1. What we're seeing in states that use this process, The candidates who are leading are going to be reaching out to the voters of the candidates who are farther down from them, saying, can I get your second choice vote? Maybe there's some awesome thing that Emily's doing. I would be willing to add that to my platform. Can I have your second choice vote? Shelley Berkeley, who's running for the Las Vegas mayor, is doing that right now, even though we don't use ranked choice voting, because I see her going out and going to everybody she ran against that lost. She's going to their voters and talking to them.
Yeah.
That's something that ranked choice voting promotes.
Is there, there's not a situation where you are technically voting for someone that you don't approve of. However, there could be a scenario where you get, members of all one party on a ballot. And that, I think, would be concerning when it comes time to the general and you're like, well, wait a minute, where's my candidate? What do you say about that, Emily?
I do think that, this is the one ballot initiative that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are opposed to, right? And I think that is one of the particular reasonings is what does it actually do to party candidates?
Yeah.
If we have 5 Republicans running for legislative seat, whatever number, right? What does that actually do to the Republican caucus? How do they divide funds? How do they prioritize who is the endorsed race, what have you? And I know these are not things that the average voter
person is not thinking about that.
But these are all realities of people that run for office, right? If you are affiliated, even if you're with one of the smaller political parties, if this were to pass, maybe there's more libertarians running for a particular race, right? And that's all going to be things that these particular races will have to deal with.
Yeah, I think too. I think that there's a lot of concern with explaining all of this to people. I think that's where some people fall short. And I should point out that it's already passed one election. It needs to pass this upcoming election. And then we are able to change the Constitution, and it becomes the process moving forward in 2026.
We have 2 years. Right.
The education component, is that critical to this? And do we have enough time to really educate people before it becomes constitutional law?
What about the presidential preference primary and mail-in voting and vote centers and poll books? We've managed all of that.
The PPP, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. I just think not many voters are engaged or looking deeply enough into this.
But if they just default to the regular way of voting, they're not disenfranchised. You're allowed to just default to the regular way that you vote.
Yeah. Emily, you brought up a good point as well, that this is not really a partisan thing. I saw Senator Jackie Rosen, a Democrat, came out and she doesn't like it. She doesn't think it's a good idea. She says it's confusing. There are Republicans who don't like it also, and yet the majority...
The governor has said that he opposes it.
So why did the majority of voters in the previous election say, yes, we need this?
I think that it's honestly simply going back to what we were previously talking about, just hearing one message, right? If you are a nonpartisan voter and you're participating in the election and you're hearing that this is going to open up access for you, then I could understand hearing that particular message and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to vote for this.
No one wants to be excluded, or you don't want it to sound
and we actually don't have any polling on the folks who voted for it. We do know that the people that voted on ballot question 1, which was the Equal Rights Amendment, and ballot question 2, which was raising the minimum wage, also voted on ballot question 3, and so did see it kind of as a reform, something that was going to make things better. But we don't really have any polling to say that people thought one way or the other about the ballot question when they voted yes last time.
This has been tried in other states, at least 2 states. Alaska most recently has, and some people view what happened there as a success. Others are questioning that because now it's on the ballot again.
Right.
Do we take it off the ballot?
Do you know who is who's behind the repeal effort?
You're about to tell us.
I'm about to tell you. It's the Heritage Foundation, the authors of Project 2025.
Okay, so there's obviously some partisan interest and partisan concern about this, and I think both sides or all sides have their special interest here. it was an independent candidate who was elected through this process in Alaska, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No,
it was a Democrat?
Yes. Mary Peltola won
That's right, okay.
in the congressional race. They only have one seat. She's the first Indigenous woman to represent Alaska.
Okay.
And then Lisa Murkowski was the Republican who won in the Senate race, and then Mike Dunleavy is their governor. And this is the first time they've reelected a governor in like 20 years.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about what happened in Alaska, Emily? I mean, was it a good thing? Was it a good kind of trial for the rest of the country who wants to maybe adopt this process?
There are two states in the United States that have it, Alaska and Maine, and they're both two states that are completely different from the state of Nevada, right? Like when you're talking about the demographics, Alaska is 64% white. The state of Maine is about 94% white. When we look at the electorate of the state of Nevada, that's not exactly the case. Yes, Alaska is rural, but we're rural in a different type of sense. And then just the electorate and the issues that are important to Nevadans is completely different than the two particular states, right? And how ranked choice got onto being law in their states is different as well. So I really don't see it being a blueprint of this being effective. Congresswoman Peltola winning is great, but I don't think that it's courtesy of ranked choice voting. I think that it's courtesy of great campaigning and great strategizing.
No, she actually credits ranked choice voting.
And she may, but I'm of the opinion, and there are many folks out there, that it's just good campaigning and good strategizing. And the reality is, Gerard, that I think that what's really important is that we're talking about our state's constitution. Do we really want to play with our state's constitution and inserting something around how we conduct elections? What if there's a possibility that if it passes, it may go well. But what if it doesn't go well? And we do see less voters coming out and participating in the electoral process? Then it would take us at least 5 years and millions of dollars to run ballot campaigns to remove it from the Constitution. I don't know about you, but I don't like playing with my Constitution like that.
I think also there's already a certain level of distrust in elections. Whether it be a truthful, experience or not. I mean, I think the media, and we talked about this a little bit, tends to perpetuate these fringe ideas. And this distrust has been created. The system has changed over time. I remember, we used to be on election night, we'd wait for the returns, we'd go home and we knew who the person was. Now we're waiting up to 30 days or 2 weeks after the election because
mail-in voting.
Their ballot that are coming in with, provisionals and mail-ins and everything else. And some of that is confusing for people. And I think there is a level of distrust out there. Does this add to the distrust or does this help it?
So I don't think it's going to make it any worse. But I find it odd that the folks who are against open primaries and ranked choice voting don't have any issue with the problems that we're having with mail-in voting. So mail-in voting right now, if you look at the number of ballots that were not counted between the presidential preference primary and the primary in June, due to errors and signature cure problems, it was over 10,000 ballots that were not counted. Nobody's talking about that.
Yeah.
We sent out the card and asked people to do their signature over again. That freaked everybody out. So there's a problem now with mail-in voting that we need to be dealing with. I don't see how ranked choice voting in open primaries is going to make it any worse, any better, any different.
I have to say that I beg to differ. I don't think to say that people are not concerned about any issues around mail-in ballot is not accurate. And I think that there are a lot of folks out there who are doing the work to ensure that they're educating the voters. And when mail ballots are being received and those cure lists are coming up from the elections department, advising who needs to cure their ballot, there are a lot of grassroots organizations out there who are doing the work to call those voters, knock on their doors to advise them that those things are happening. And I think that the reality is that should we look into how we can improve this a little bit more? Yeah, there maybe just needs to be a lot more education around this, but vote by mail.
We're in agreement on education, on the education component.
If education will work in this case, it will work in the other case.
All right, let's take
Not exactly, but okay.
Good time to take a break, but we'll be back with more discussion. Sure. We're just getting started. You're watching The Vegas Verdict. We'll be back with more on ballot question 3, ranked choice voting, coming up after this.
If you've been injured in an accident, you don't have to go it alone. At Paul Paddle Law, we understand your injuries aren't just physical. They also bring financial burden and emotional strain. At our firm, it's not just about legal representation. It's about genuine care and commitment. Lock in the attention you deserve from your attorney. We'll get you on the path to recovery. Call Paul Paddle Law. Legal security when you need it.
Welcome back, everyone. This is The Vegas Verdict. We're discussing ballot question 3 on the upcoming Nevada ballot. This includes ranked choice voting. It would change our Constitution with respect to voting. And moving forward in the 2026 election, this would become our new process. We have Dr. Sondra Cosgrove and Emily is here with us as well. One of the arguments, and you sort of touched on this, Dr. Sondra, is that candidates are incentivized to appeal to a broader audience. There's the potential that maybe it would reduce negative campaigning.
Right.
Maybe expand on that a little bit for us.
Going back to Mary Peltola, I mean, when I interviewed Mary Peltola right after she got elected, because I found out one of my former students was her campaign manager. And what Mary said, and you hear this, I'm sure Emily's heard this too, especially women, they ask, I'd like to run, and they get told it's not your turn. It's not your turn. And she was waiting. She'd been in the legislature for 12 years. When they went to open primary, she was able to put her name on the ballot as a Democrat, because that's who she is. Hired some smart 20-somethings to do her social media. There were 53 people in that race. She came in fourth, top 4. And so there was an independent and then 2 Republicans. Sarah Palin was one of the Republicans.
Yeah.
But Mary said she, as an Indigenous woman, kind of understood kind of consensus politics, that you really need to get along with everybody if you want to succeed. So she said every event she went to, parade, she would look for Sarah Palin signs, she would look for Nick Begich signs, because he was the other Republican candidate.
Yeah.
Walk up to those voters and say, wonderful person, love Nick, love Sarah, can I talk to you about your second choice vote?
That's a strategy thing, and I have no problem with strategy is required by good candidates.
That's how she won.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with that at all. Do you think this would be a broad result if we implement this?
No, I think that this could be the circumstances in a couple of races, but I don't think that it would be across the board, because what I see is you have 5 people who are moving to the general, right? And being in all of my experience in campaign world, that's 5 people who are now going to be knocking on your door. And I don't really, in a majority of races, I don't really see somebody saying, let me be your second pick or third pick. They're going to say, let me be your first pick, right? But I think what that creates is a level of voter fatigue already, because people are, right now, we're on October 2nd as this conversation is happening. People are already tired of hearing the commercials, getting their doors knocked on, getting mail or what have you. If you are passing this form of ranked choice voting, you're going to be talked to by 5 people in every single race.
And
which,
if you're in that lower 5, you're essentially buying yourself time and more of an opportunity is what you're doing.
You get to keep talking.
Yeah.
And then you're hoping that if you're talking to your voters, like for instance in the U.S. Senate race in Alaska, Lisa Murkowski actually campaigned with Patricia Chesborough, who was the one Democrat, and went with her and said to the Democrats, there's 3 Republicans in this race, so it's probably going to be a Republican who eventually wins. Let me tell you why I'm the Republican you can trust, so I can win your second choice vote. She ended up with like 47% of the vote, but it wasn't 50% plus 1. When Patricia dropped down, she got eliminated in the first round in that instant runoff. This was all live stream and it's on YouTube, you can watch it now. When Patricia's spreadsheet, when it opened up, over 20,000 Democrats gave Lisa Murkowski their second choice vote, and she won because of that. She is a super independent Republican.
Yeah. There's not a scenario where Republican votes would go to a Democrat candidate.
It's
per se.
possible.
If the
Is it-
voter
okay.
wants their vote to go to a Democrat and then a Republican, that's what the
I
voter
see.
wants.
Yeah, if they rank them and
However
they're not
they
looking
rank.
at party, they're looking at person.
That person.
If they rank
that's
them
the
and
voter's choice.
You know, when you just hear redistribution, I think some people go, "Oh, redistribution of wealth." You know, it's kind of along that same school of thought, and some people have legitimate
Sure.
concerns about that.
And the thing that Alaska did that I want us to do is when they did their final tabulation, and they took 2 weeks to do the mail-in voting. That's why the date is 2 weeks after Election Day. They live streamed it on YouTube, and it's recorded. You can go watch it right now. And they had the big screen up behind the registrar of voters, so you could watch in the races where they went to ranked choice voting, the actual tabulation happen. So you could see how the votes were being retabulated from a first choice vote to a second choice vote.
Yeah.
So it was very transparent, and I think that helped a lot.
Okay, what is your what's your gut feeling right now? Emily, we'll start with you. What's your gut feeling? Is this going to pass? Is this going to become law and the way of the land here before we know it?
Well, I think my hope in many of the organizations that we work with, their hope is that it won't, because of the reasons that we talked about today. And I think that, we're hopeful that it will not. I think that we're doing more and more work to ensure that voters in Nevada are educated on all aspects of the ballot measure,
Yeah.
not just the open primaries aspect. And I hope that it ends up being that way, and we can continue having a conversation around expanding voter access more in a way that's being truthful and honest, and not so much at the consequence of not giving correct information to voters.
Yeah.
Omission is not incorrect information, but you can Google my name and
it's
see that I've been
not
talking
full
about
information.
it.
It's not full.
It's not
And
full.
and that's the part that kind of, like, I've watched a lot of the
Yes.
ads, and now we've got ads on both sides. At first it was just yes on 3. Maybe that just means they had more money to begin with, so they started
Yeah.
their TV campaign earlier. But the ads are frustrating to me.
And then, look, we're here clearly opposing each other, but out of respect to her, she is the only person that I have spoken to that is yes on this question that talks about both aspects.
I love Sondra. I've heard her on other issues, and she can actually, persuade me or convince me that, here's the benefit. And I wish there were more discussions on this level about important issues like
Right.
this.
No, I appreciate
really
what
do.
you're doing.
And
you know what? Here's the thing that I like about being a Nevadan.
Yep.
If it passes again, and I know a lot of the college students that I talk to are frustrated with our system, they want more choices, they like this. And there are some people who are like, both the parties are against it, yeah, I'm voting for that. If it passes, we'll work together to make sure that there's voter education, because that's what it means to be a Nevadan. We can disagree.
I love that.
And then we'll move
You guys
forward.
can do workshops together and,
Yeah,
and
no.
do,
Yes.
maybe educate a whole lot of people and bring in people who were, for whatever reason, not
I've
not
worked
part
on a
of the
bunch
process.
of campaigns where I was opposed to something, it passed, and I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what we're doing,
Yeah,
so let's
yeah.
move forward.
What about, and we touched on this briefly too, what about the counting process? This is more of a frustration than something that is, really bothersome to me. But I hate that we don't know on Election Day who our candidates
That's mail-in voting.
are. And that's mail-in voting. Will this complicate it even more? Will
No.
this delay the process?
It is mail-in voting, but it's also same-day voter registration, right? Because more and more people
good point. It's
of
provisional.
all
Yep.
political parties are using
Provisional
same-day
ballots, yeah.
voter registration. And I think the aspect that folks need to keep in mind is that Nevada is a very transient state, right? Out of all of the battleground states, we have the highest move rate. And so that means more and more people are moving here. And unfortunately, not everybody's like us that thinks, I move, I got to go change my voter
Right,
registration
right.
and my DMV, ID. And so I think that's a reality of it. There is a potential, right, that there have been in other cities where there is ranked choice voting, where it took a longer time to do the tabulations on this. In New York, it was released in 2020. It took a longer time. It took about 2 months. And so I'm not saying that in all of our particular races, it will take as long as 2 months, but there may be particular races, especially if there are recall efforts matched with the RCV, that it will take a significant amount of time. And I worry about some of those races. What if it's a U.S. Senate race, right? Because that's covered under RCV. In Nevada in 2022, we were the deciding factor as a state as to which way the party balance went in the U.S. Senate. So I think those are a couple of things that folks need to think about.
Nevada absolutely matters on a in a big sense.
Right. If you talk to Lorena Portillo, though, who is the registrar of voters here, and we've talked to her, talked to the other registrars, the exact same software they're using in Alaska is the software that we use here. It's just a matter of purchasing an extra part of the software to do the ranked choice voting tabulation. In a tabulation in Alaska, it took 32 minutes. To run all of their ranked choice races, it was 32 minutes.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of a factor the tabulation part is, and I don't think that's the primary issue here. We're going to take another break, and then when we come back, we will issue our verdict. You're watching The Vegas Verdict, and we'll be back right after this.
Legal troubles require swift action, and there's only one attorney who's quick on his feet.
Legal troubles don't wait, and neither should you. I'm Tony Abitangelo, a former judge with 30 years' experience. I know the judicial system, and I know what will work for you in court.
When your circumstance requires a skilled negotiator who knows the law, tap into Tony. He's a former judge who can defend your rights. Call 707-7000.
Welcome back. Great discussion today on ranked choice voting, ballot question number 3 coming up on this Nevada election coming up in November. Ladies, I'd love to have your final thoughts on this, maybe just a closing argument, closing pitch. Sure. Emily Zamora, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first and foremost.
Thanks for being here.
I think for us, we are opposed to question 3, the open primaries ranked choice voting ballot initiative, because we feel that it does not help the current election system. We feel that it's not being honest with voters as to what it actually is and what the actual complications could potentially be. I'd say 2, additionally, we're opposed to it because of who's actually paying into the ballot initiative. It's coming from just about 10 multimillionaires and billionaires that don't have any association with the state of Nevada and that just want to use our state as a test on the level of influence that their money can have on elections. And 3, I would say it's something that we know Nevada voters are resilient and they will eventually learn if it were to get passed, but we do know that it's something that is confusing. The Democratic Party used it here during their caucus, and the feedback that they got was their voters were confused, right? And not only is it just the process of ranked choice voting, but this ballot initiative only applies to certain races. So in a 2026, a quarter of your ballot's going to be ranked choice voting, and the other, 3/4 of the ballot is going to be just regular.
This wouldn't apply to presidential races.
Not presidential.
No.
Yeah. Dr. Cosgrove, your final thoughts on this.
Sure. So what I would ask people is don't pay attention to the mailers, don't pay attention to the ads on either side, because those are consultants that are getting paid a lot of money to trick you.
Yeah.
There's a Secretary of State's ballot guide is already on his website. It has the pro and con arguments. It has the full language. To go ahead and study it. You can contact me directly. There's other people on the grassroots team you can contact to talk about this. And as far as the funding of ballot questions, citizen initiative ballot questions are expensive. It's millions of dollars. And you can look at other ballot initiatives that are on the ballot right now that are also taking money from outside people. So I don't know that should be a litmus test. But I do think it's addressing problems that we have. We have too few people who are participating in our primaries. We've got polarization. We have young people not wanting to vote. We've got to do something to make voting in the election process more appealing, and having 5 people move forward makes it more appealing.
Yeah. We have had many Vegas Verdict podcasts previously, but this is the first one where I think as we get ready to hand down our verdict. I'm pretty confident as to the result of how we're all going to stand on this issue. The way we do it is just I count down from 3, and then we either say yes or no, in this case indicating yes on 3 or no on 3. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. No.
Yes.
And once again, we have a hung jury. I'll just throw in my ultimate deciding factor is the confusion element. I want more engagement and I want more participation. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I want it to be fair and inclusive and all of these things. And I think, frankly, you both do as well.
Right.
The confusion thing, and you brought up, the Secretary of State's office has the ballot question already written out, and it does. But even the ballot question, if you read through it, it's...
That's because lawyers, unfortunately, write the ballot questions.
And they do, and that's a good point. They have to make it legal. It's in legalese, and but when you're talking about maybe the average 6th grade education citizen,
my students.
Okay, well, I didn't call them that. Hopefully they don't get upset.
I get a little worried when we start saying other people will be confused, because that's not my job to decide if somebody else is confused.
I agree. You don't want to dumb things down. But at the same time, how do you reach a broad audience?
Yeah, when we're advocating and creating policy, we have to think about the impacts of all people that it affects.
So we help them, we educate them.
I would absolutely entertain an open primary concept, but I'd have to read the language. I'd have to see exactly the specifics and how it would be handed down. But ladies, thank you both. Tremendous respect for both of you, and hopefully we'll have you back. And I don't know if we'll have time before the election, but if not, we'll find another subject and have you back again.
The legislature.
Oh yeah,
there you go. There's a lot of state measures and bills that we will probably have a good discussion about. Thank you both. Thank you for watching. You've been watching The Vegas Verdict. By the way, we are available on Amazon, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel. We have a Facebook page. VegasVerdict.com is our website, and we'd love for you to join the discussion. If you have any thoughts on what we've been talking about here today, ranked choice voting, or any of the other subjects that you see on our website, please jump in, and perhaps one day you will be a guest of the show as well. Thanks for watching.